This is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3.
Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station and listen. It's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Woo, it's Friday. There is a lot of stuff going on this weekend. Take a peek at the newsletter Axios Chicago put out. There is more than half a dozen different festivals or art shows or neighborhood festivals. There's plenty to do. There is plenty to do this weekend to remind you why life is worth living. Okay. Earlier today, actually I started last night, a publication called The Washingtonian posted that they had set up a camera on a balcony at the Watergate hotel across from the Kennedy Center. They had set up a camera to focus on the name of the Kennedy Center. Late this morning, a judge said no to Donald Trump's effort to pause the order that his name be removed. He said the name was supposed to be removed by Friday. He went to court and said, no, no, no. And the judge said, you know what? No to you. No to you. So earlier today, they were setting up scaffolding, and both the Washingtonian, MS Now, they all have a camera focused on the front of the Kennedy Center. Earlier today, like I said, they were putting up scaffolding. Listen to this glorious noise. Yes, that was the scaffolding being constructed in front of the Kennedy Center where the names are. And there is a bit of scaffolding that goes up high enough to take off the name Donald J. Trump. And like I said, MS Now on their streaming service, the Washingtonian on a YouTube channel they have, everybody has cameras focused on this because nobody wants to miss it. The lawyers for the Kennedy Center have already ordered Donald Trump's name removed from just about everything else. Off of the email signatures, off of the stationery, off of anywhere they find it at the Kennedy Center. Donald J. Trump's name is going to be removed. When I think he realized that this was a battle he wasn't going to win, Trump said, you know what? I don't even care about the Kennedy Center anymore. And yet he fired the board, put his own cronies in place, decided that he himself was going to lead the board. And he was going to bring more artists who represent the people. You know, the Kennedy Center, they drink a lot of wine. Well, we're going to bring beer to the Kennedy Center. Except, I don't know, whatever artists his administration reached out to. But there weren't a lot of takers. And artists who were already booked there, pretty much to a person, canceled. Symphonies canceled, artists canceled, ballet companies canceled. And even before the official cancellation, people who had tickets were asking for refunds. It got so bad, and its emptiness was such an embarrassment to him. That's when he said, oh, you know, Kennedy Center is going to close for renovation. It'll probably be closed for 2 years. Well, looks like that is a battle taking over the Kennedy Center. That is a battle that Donald Trump has lost. Regardless of whatever he's doing in every other area immigration, Iran war, whatever. He is publicly failing in the world of entertainment. Most of the A-listers invited to this big UFC fight on the Washington lawn, they've all said no. Donald Trump, not a hit with the entertainment industry. As a matter of fact, just today, Ariana Grande let the Trump folks know that they could not use her music. No, that was no, no, no. Just as pretty much every artist has said. Because, of course, Trump never gets clearance. He never does it the legal way. He just takes somebody's music and uses it, whether it's for a commercial or a rally or whatever. And so he gets publicly embarrassed every time when they come to him and say, please no, ixnay, take it away. And I am going to keep an eye, as best I can, on the camera. The courts ruled that the name of Donald Trump needed to come off by today. And like I said, late this morning, Trump's last appeal to stop that order was refused. So the scaffolding is ready. Remember Kerry Kennedy? Kerry Kennedy said that when they could finally take Trump's name off the Kennedy Center, she was going to show up with a ladder and a hammer, and she was going to do it herself. But it looks like it is going to be done much more professionally. I will keep you posted on this. The workers put up a scaffolding and then they left. It looks like the workers are coming back. We'll see if they are coming back to check on things or if they're coming back to actually take Donald J. Trump's name off of the Kennedy Center. Something that, this is his, just do it. Just do it. And once it's done, it'll be a lot harder to undo. Well, you know what? The people at the Kennedy Center didn't give up. And it is being undone, hopefully, today. I hope you were safe last night. There was a lot of bad weather, and there were tornadoes that were reported to have touched down. One was reported to have touched down near Peoria, Illinois, Streator, Illinois, Bartlett, Illinois, Hebron, Indiana, St. John, Indiana. No deaths, though, at least as far as we know so far. There are about 170,000 people who lost their power. But nobody, at least as far as we know right now, nobody died in what was some really scary weather yesterday. Glad you stayed safe. Okay. Well, I'm kind of stalling to get around to Iran. Okay. The Trump administration says that the United States and the Iranians have agreed on language. Supposedly, they're going to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The United States isn't going to have any blockade. Iran said no to a nuclear program. That's what is being reported out of the White House. Pakistan's prime minister, who has been a go-between in these negotiations, also says that there is a final text for a peace deal. However, let's read some of the other headlines. Chaotic talks on a U.S.-Iran deal continue on the Trump roller coaster. That was from The Guardian. New York Times, United States and Iran offer conflicting accounts of terms of draft agreement. Though they do say President Trump is saying there could be a signing ceremony as soon as this weekend or in 2 weeks. He didn't say that. I'm saying that because that's what he likes to say. Okay, and the Wall Street Journal is worried that not all of Iran is on board with this deal. They say Trump's Iran deal still has to get past the Revolutionary Guard. That is, of course, the hardline security group in Iran. Israel originally said, hey, we don't even know what you're talking about. And it still seems to be a big question as to whether or not Israel is on board with any kind of deal, or whether or not, frankly, Israel has a part of any of this deal. Because remember, the people in Iran, the leadership of Iran kept saying, you know, the people of Lebanon, they are our brothers, and we can't sign a peace deal as long as they're still being attacked. New York Times, despite talk of an Iran peace deal, Lebanon's war grinds on. So I would take that as a no, that Israel is not going to be a big part of this agreement. Have you followed along? There is text that everybody's agreed to, or the text is still being worked on. There might be a signing ceremony this weekend, but there might be a huge faction in Iran that isn't ready to sign anything. It's another one of those choose your adventure days. So choose your adventure. By the way, I want to let you know that the phone lines and the text lines are wide open. 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Lady B is ready to take your calls. Here's a text that came in about Iran. This continual boasting by the liar-in-chief over the Iran peace deal. Oh, the peace deal is done. Sounds like the same lies we heard about the Epstein files. The world and Iran are laughing at this clown whose three-ring circus of waste and low IQ individuals will be on display on Sunday. Woohoo! 773-763-9278. Lady B is ready to take your calls. I am keeping an eye on the workers, the construction workers who are very slowly climbing the scaffolding that they built earlier today in front of the Kennedy Center, where hopefully in the very next few hours, they will be chiseling Donald Trump's name off the building. Bob from Elgin texted in, watching Trump's name come off the Kennedy Center could easily have been pay-per-view and could have made millions for the Democratic National Party. Bob, you are correct. I mean, of course it is available for free, but the Democrats could have, if for no other reason than to simply rub his nose into this failure on his part, could have, perhaps should have, or might have announced a pay-per-view, if for no other reason than to make sure that everybody is focused on what is going on. I mentioned the Iran war. Of course, immigration is still a hot button issue. It is almost, I believe it is exactly a year. Remember when Kristi Noem was giving a news conference and Senator Al Padilla happened to be in the building? So he walked into the room because he was going to ask her a question. He started to walk up toward the podium. He was tackled by security and dragged out of the room. As he was dragged out of the room, he was pushed down to the floor, face down, and he was handcuffed. One of the finer moments of Kristi Noem's tenure at the Department of Homeland Security. Senator Padilla was on Morning Joe this morning talking to Willie Geist about what happened a year ago today. Listen to this.
In some ways, it feels like things actually have gotten worse since that happened to you a year ago.
Right. No, well, first of all, thank you for having me, particularly on this day. And you're absolutely right. Because of what continues to happen, the continued cruelty of this administration, we absolutely want to use this 1 year later mark to make sure that we continue to put a spotlight on the abuses of this administration, their harmful policies. It started a year ago after that incident. Unfortunately, I was proven right. The 2 points coming after that press conference that I tried to make was, one, if this is how they'll treat a senator with the audacity to try to ask a question, imagine what's happening when the cameras aren't there in corners across the country during Trump's immigration enforcement mass deportation campaign. Number two, this was Los Angeles. And Los Angeles was simply the test case that predicted that they were laying the groundwork to come into cities across the country. And that's exactly what's happened from Washington, D.C. to Chicago to Portland, Minneapolis, consequentially, of course, many others. But things have shifted in the last year. Some good news and some bad news. The good news is Secretary Noem is gone, right? Bovino is gone. Pam Bondi, gone. We're still here, and we're still fighting. But their tactics have changed. You don't see the visuals on the nightly news or social media of cruelty and violence in the streets. But you're seeing maybe even more cruel than using the process, right? Detention facilities that are not open to the press for oversight and accountability. And we're hearing about the conditions, maggots and rotten food that's being served to detainees, right? They're not convicted criminals, they're detainees. Lack of clean drinking water. Lack of access to medical code, just basic human standards that we're required to provide in facilities like this. And then, of course, the delays in people's paperwork. We have DACA renewals that are taking months and months and months longer than they used to. In the meantime, people's DACA status is expiring and they are more vulnerable to deportation. They're no longer able to work while their applications are in limbo. They're using the system to continue to make life difficult for immigrants, the vast majority who are not the dangerous, violent criminals they say that we're going to focus on.
That was Senator Alex Padilla talking this morning about the 1 year anniversary of the time that he entered a Kristi Noem news conference, started to walk up to her podium, and was very, very physically removed from the room by security. And then outside the room, he was pushed to the ground, face down, handcuffed. A senator. Somebody else is texting in about immigration. You know, he talked about if they're treating a senator that way, how are they treating detainees? Well, we're starting to get an idea. There are more and more reports about detainees being given very little food, and what food there is sometimes rotten. They're getting no medical treatment. They are being beaten by guards, and in some cases, they have been accused of sexual assaults by guards. These facilities where we are keeping people who don't have a senator's power, once this is all said and done and we start investigating this, I think what we are going to find will be breathtakingly ugly. There are already reports that what is going on is breathtakingly ugly. Somebody texted in, why are Tom Homan, who allegedly was recorded accepting a $50,000 bribe in an FBI sting, Jonathan Ross, who killed Renee Good, and the deaths of Jesus Ochoa, Ray Gutierrez, who killed Alex Petty, and Charles Exum, who fired 5 shots into Miramar Martinez. Why are most of these people still permitted to roam free? How is this not obstruction of justice? Well, Jay, it is up to state prosecutors to go after these folks. The feds are not going to go after them. And they are charging that, because they were operating on the basis of federal orders, that they have immunity. They do not have immunity from state crimes. In the case of Renee Good and Alex Petty, Mary Moriarty is the prosecutor in Minnesota. Hennepin County prosecutor. These killings took place in Hennepin County. It is up to Mary Moriarty to bring charges. She has brought charges in one case where there was an attack. She has not brought charges in these cases. And she's saying, well, it's because the feds won't share information with us. But you know what? George Floyd, that death of George Floyd happened in the lovely state of Minnesota. And the prosecutor who successfully put Derek Chauvin in jail had very little to go on, not much more than the video that people recorded there of how Derek Chauvin refused to let George Floyd up, refused to let bystanders help, refused to let paramedics help. He was somehow able to get a conviction. Moriarty doesn't seem to have that same kind of confidence. I personally believe that if Mary Moriarty doesn't bring charges in the killing of Renee Good and Alex Petty, Mary Moriarty can kiss her public service career goodbye. She is going to get probably several opponents. And she will never be a public prosecutor again, I believe, if she doesn't bring charges in these cases. I would rather she brought charges and everything went to court and the case was lost, rather than being afraid to bring charges at all. These people have to be held to account. And if a court decides or a jury decides they don't think there's enough evidence and they let them go, so be it. But not bringing them into a courtroom, not making them face what they have done. That is unacceptable. Absolutely, positively unacceptable. Somebody texted in, hey, Joan, I have an idea. I think that when Trump's name comes off the Kennedy Center, they should put all those letters in a big box and drop it off at the White House saying, return to sender, no longer at this address. That is very creative. That is very creative. I like that. As I said, there are a number of cameras focused on the front of the Kennedy Center live. This morning we saw workers put up scaffolding. Then late this morning, a judge denied Donald Trump's appeal to stop the process. And now the workers seem to be slowly climbing back up the scaffolding. When they start to take this name off, I will let you know. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more of your calls. It is Friday. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Visit ComEd.com/facility assessment to learn more about energy savings.
Want to join the conversation?
I'm going to say exactly what I think here.
Got something to say?
Everyone needs to hear what I got to say.
Call Joan now at 773-763-9278 and join the conversation. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820.
One of the things we've been talking about today is the effort to rename the Kennedy Center, the Donald Trump and JFK Center, and how the courts have said no to that. There is a scaffolding in front of the building, and workers are slowly climbing up to where the Trump name is. Greg from Lake in the Hills texted in that the Gordie Howe Bridge that connects our country with Canada, that we should rename that the Donald J. Trump Bridge. Well, he calls it the Bridge of Size, S-I-Z-E. Remember, that was the bridge that Donald Trump was making such a fuss about, and it was paid for by Canada. Yeah, paid for by Canada. Connects Detroit to Windsor, Ontario. Going to be a huge economic boost for, guess what, the United States. But Trump doesn't understand that. He's like, oh, you're naming it for a Canadian. Well, Gordie Howe, the hockey player, was born in Canada, but he played almost his entire career for American teams. I'm sorry. It's just so stupid. It is just so stupid. And so the opening for that bridge has been postponed. Still is, according to the most recent reporting. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer says she hopes the Gordie Howe Bridge can get back on track. But I agree with you, Greg. If we rename it for Donald Trump, it will open next week. Let's go to the phone lines. Our good friend Bobby is on the line from Indiana. Hello, Bobby. How are you?
Oh, boy, Johnny. For me, this has been the week from literally the depths of hell, but finally today, a first glimmer I've seen in quite a while that I'm getting some joy out of. But when I heard about this Trump's hand-picked board of rooster suckers for the Kennedy Center trying to get a stay on getting his name taken off, I called my congressman and told him that Trump needs to see this happening. We need to see it. The world needs to see his name coming down from everything.
Yes, indeed.
I hang up the phone, turn the radio back on, and young Tommy Hartman is kind of with a chuckle immediately saying, well, just coming over the wire that Trump's name is coming off the Kennedy Center. Now talk about fast work.
Yep.
Wow.
It is wonderful that this has moved as quickly as it has, and that they are erasing his name from everything connected with the Kennedy Center. Everything. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Once that name comes down, I hope his name and picture and whatnot, we need to start getting that down everywhere. And he needs to see that. He needs to know that's happening, and that is going to get to him probably more than anything you could do to him.
Yep. I think you are 100% correct, because I think this guy is terrified that he is going to be forgotten. And that's also something that leads me to believe that he knows that he's really sick. By the way, the Washington Post reported this week that Donald Trump sees 22 medical specialists. He has 22 medical specialists that he sees on a regular basis. And I think he's desperate to put his name everywhere because he knows he's going to die. I think he knows he's going to croak.
Yeah, well, I just saw one this week, and they can't tell me, well, you may have something that in time will become blood cancer, but not right away. You know, God knows what's wrong with that jerk.
It is something that I think we are going to see. He's not going to live out the rest of his term. He just simply isn't. He's got too many health problems. He doesn't take care of himself. He's grossly overweight. You can see, I mean, he doesn't even have ankles anymore. The opening from his shoe, it's like a tree trunk going up his leg. I mean, this is a guy who is not in great health, to say nothing of the fact that he keeps falling asleep during the day.
Well, he needs to live just long enough to see that his kingdom fading before his eyes.
Yep. And on top of the Kennedy Center, how he decided to create this slush fund to pay all the people who were damaged, like those poor January 6th insurrectionists, and a judge paused it. That judge has now extended the order to keep this fund from coming into existence. And she basically said that Donald Trump keeps telling everybody he's going to use it, he's going to do it, it's going to happen. So I'm extending my order because that's not what I ordered. I ordered it to not happen. So he's got two losses today.
The only people that were harmed were you and Miss B and me and the rest of the people that know what really is going on and should be going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have a good day,
Bobby, I have a question for you.
Okay.
One of the tornadoes touched down near an Indiana town, Hebron. I've been pronouncing it Hebron, but it might be Hebron.
Yeah,
do you know?
Right. Well, you know what? Usually I pronounced it Hebron, but I've heard both ways.
Oh.
I've heard both ways. The only damage I had last night was the water finally came dripping in the bedroom enough the bed got wet. So I got
ooh. Yikes.
Anyway, and that's the best thing of the week.
Yeah.
But
yeah, really.
But anyway, yeah. So I hope the hell that does come down, and that's just let that be the first roll of the snowball downhill with his naming and all of this other garbage.
Yes, I agree with you. And let's see. Nope. The workers still have one more level on the scaffold to go as they slowly but surely climb up to get his name off. We will.
Maybe they're looking for overtime.
Maybe they are, and I'd be willing to pay.
I'd find a way to contribute. I'd be willing to contribute, and I don't have any money, but I'll scrape it up somehow for that.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Bobby, thank you so much for the call.
Bye-bye.
Guys, we are going to take a break, and we're going to be back with more calls and texts right after this.
Because facts matter. You are listening to WCPT 820.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Every weekday afternoon from 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT 820.
It is Friday, and every Friday we spend the first half of the show taking your calls and reading your texts. I read a text from Greg from Lake in the Hills about the Gordie Howe Bridge. He is also on the phone line. Let's talk to him now. Hey, Greg, how are you?
Hey, Joan. Yeah, thanks for reading my text. And the only thing I would add to it, which was a little harder to decipher, is when I said, call it the Bridge of Sighs, there actually is a Bridge of Sighs over in Venice.
Yes.
And the Bridge of Sighs, I don't know what it crosses, but the story behind it is it's people who are being taken. It's their last trip from freedom into a detention camp forever. You know what I mean? And when they go over there, the last thing is they sigh because that's their last view of freedom. So I was doing that, but also there was a great album by Robin Trower called Bridge of Sighs, and that's in that photo also. And then from that, I just took, Trump wouldn't know anything about that, but he'd say, I want to call it the Bridge of Sighs. And that's why I put the elephant in there, too, because it represents the Republican Party obstructing the new Gordie Howe Bridge, because, Trump's is the figurehead, but, all the little Mike Johnsons of the world are making it happen for him.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the other reason I called, and I'll do this real quick, is I would like to propose that, how we name hurricanes after a male 1 year and after a female the next year, so that they all have their names like that. I would like to propose that as we go forward, we name any mass shootings after prominent crooked, despicable Republican, like, for example, Mitch McConnell. Had this happened at the time, if we were doing this, we would call it the Mitch McConnell Buffalo 10 massacre, or the Ted Cruz Uvalde 22 massacre, etc. I would love to see something like that take place, and really stick it to these guys who think they're above everything.
Yes.
Wish we could do that.
Well, that would certainly bring home the point, and especially if we name those mass shootings after people who are preventing common sense gun laws. I mean, Republicans don't even want to vote on red flag laws. They don't want to vote on waiting periods. They don't want to vote on, doing a better background check. Stuff that isn't like, we're afraid the government's going to take our guns. No. And in my opinion, responsible gun owners want responsible people to be in possession of them, and not kids, not people with mental problems. That is not the point. And people who are hunters, people who shoot targets, and people who respect what they're doing, they don't want the crazies to have guns. They really don't.
And the last thing, based on the same thing, is I heard recently there's either it just passed or it's pending in Congress to loosen the laws even further, so that there will be no face-to-face when you do the buying. In other words, you will now be able to buy the guns through mail order, and there will no longer be one human being looking into the eyes of the purchaser to see if they can detect any malice at that time. Maybe that's not a big deal, but it sounds like it is.
Yeah,
it's almost like
I've been reading about that. That is something the Trump administration wants there to be mail order guns. You're absolutely right, Greg. You're absolutely right. By the way, I looked it up. The Bridge of Sighs goes over the Rio de Palazzo, so the palace, the Palazzo River.
Quite a nice piece of art. The bridge itself. It's a small bridge, it appears, but I just thought that those three things went together. And if you listen to the words of Bridge of Sighs by Robin Trower, pretty eerie. That song is a very good guitar work if you like electric guitar. He's one of the it's one of the quintessential songs from 1974, and that album, I believe, won awards. It's a great album, Bridge of Sighs. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks,
nice talking
Greg.
with you. Have a great weekend.
You too. Good to talk with you. Let's go to our good friend Dave from Hoffman Estates, who's on the line. Hello, Dave. How are you?
Hey, Joan. Couple things here. Maybe these the workers might be city workers, so it's probably why. But as they're taking down those letters and stuff, maybe you should play in the background that John Cougar Mellencamp and the walls came tumbling down.
Yeah.
Or with this one with his. With Trump, declaring that the war is over, what is it, like 39 times? But maybe talk about another song.
Does today count as the 40th time?
I don't know.
I think it might be the 40th time. And, I love this. There's a deal, there's not a deal. The United States, it says that they've agreed to terms. Iran says no, or not necessarily. Pakistan says, yes, I think there's a deal. I mean, it's just insane.
And that one in the background, maybe play that Rolling Stones song, 19th Nervous Breakdown.
Yeah, really, that's what I'm having, Dave.
Right. But now, in all seriousness, though, today is Women's Veterans Recognition Day. Today's date honors the historic signing of the Women's Armed Services Integration Act of 1948 by President Harry S. Truman, which officially allowed women to serve as permanent, regular members of the U.S. Armed Forces. That's 78th anniversary already of that. And
I'm sure Pete Hegseth has a huge celebration planned in honor of this, don't you think?
Oh, yes, ma'am. I mean, more than 300,000 women served in Iraq and Afghanistan, with over 9,000 earning combat action badges, a testament to their capabilities and resilience since the 2015 policy change ensuring that women meeting the required training and qualifications can serve in any direct ground combat role. And a couple of it, they had gotten Silver Stars. There was another one of the from the Kentucky National Guard unit. This woman, her name was Sergeant Leanne Hester, and I won't go through the whole thing, but she and they had won a Silver Star for her actions, what they did, against these in Iraq and that. And then another one was Specialist Monica Lynn Brown in 2008 in Afghanistan. So it's like, I'm sure, you won't hear nothing from Hegseth, the way he tries to devalue women and troops and stuff like that. And you look at these ones that on these ads, there was how many of them were messed up, missing limbs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That they're just as much equal.
Women, yes. Women have suffered, and their contributions shouldn't be ignored and shouldn't be,
exactly
put in the back burner.
Yep, exactly. And then with Trump, get back to him on that. Remember, like when the Republicans used to say Obama gave the Iranians that $400 million in cash and pallets full of money? Well, it wasn't very true, but now Trump's latest gig now is what? 300 billion with a B, a ransom. That's only what 800 times more, they say, than what. But of course, they're going to dole that out differently, so it doesn't look like, that. What did they say? People say he'll cloak it. They'll be cloaking this stuff, and that, so it doesn't, shine bad. But hey, Joan, before I get out, do you think that with Trump, with all these bruisings and stuff like that, do you think any of that may have come from his last term when they gave him that witch's brew that time for COVID? He was more or less a guinea pig that time when he got it, and they put together, I don't know, what was it, ivermectin or something, or some kind of. There was about 2 or 3 chemicals they put together to get it. It was kind of like if it didn't work, oh well.
Yeah, really. And, if it didn't work, oh well. And I think R.F. Kennedy Jr. is still on the ivermectin bandwagon. He's just such a disaster. No vaccines, no real treatments. Let's eliminate all research. Yeah, we don't need to know any more about cancer. Yeah. What a guy. What a guy.
Hey, Joe, you notice that probably 2 of the biggest candidates we got on the left that they seem to fear the most is Tellerico and Plattner. Them are the ones that they're going to, trying to smear any way they can.
Well, they really are worried that not only will Republicans lose the House, but they'll lose the Senate as well. And by the way, Dan texted in earlier today, I'd like to remind everyone that Pete Hegseth has a Nazi tattoo. So if there's anybody criticizing Plattner, they should bring up Pete. I'd forgotten about that.
Is it a Nazi, or was that a one from the...
Or white supremacy, it was something...
The one that, like, with the fighting the Christians and it wasn't good anyway.
Yeah.
And what about all those with throwing the Nazi salute?
Oh, you mean like Musk?
Musk, and there was about 2 more from the Republicans that did that. They didn't seem to get too bent out of shape on that.
No, they did not.
If you did that in Germany, they'd be arrested. So,
yeah.
Anyway, let me get off so others can get through. But thought I'd share a couple of things with you and, honor the women veterans today. So.
Yes, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Dave.
No problem. I always keep my eye on that crap.
Yes, you do.
All right. Have a good weekend, Joe. Be well.
Thank you. You too. The workers in front of the Kennedy Center have reached the top of the scaffold, right across from the Trump name. They still haven't started, it looks to me like they still haven't started pulling off the letters. But they're up there. They're up there. Ah, what a good day. You know, what do you say? What a good day. Let's go back to the phone lines. Jim is on the line from Chicago. Hey, Jim.
Hi, Joan. If I was working there, I'd get that J. The middle initials J. I'd take that home as a curiosity for my for the next 9,000 years. Anyway, the reason I called Project 2025, how will they treat that in history going forward? Now, that document cooked up by the Heritage Foundation wasn't brought up in the 2016 election. It wasn't brought up in the 2020 election. It really was started to be bandied about maybe 5 months before the 2024 election, because I know that Kamala Harris mentioned it once or twice, but nobody really understood it, and I'm certain Trump didn't understand it. But is this the Republican Party going forward? Will they be harnessed with this fiasco going forward? In other words, if they don't swear fealty to this Project 2025, which is, I mean, just wreak havoc on our tranquility.
Well, I have a feeling that that they would like nothing more than to distance themselves from that. Remember, even Trump, he said, I really want to thank these people at the Heritage Foundation. They have put together a blueprint for my next term. And then it started to get some backlash. And then it was like, oh, yeah, I haven't read it. And then after that, more backlash. And it was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know what it is. Never seen it.
I'm sure of that. Yeah. I'm sure of that. But I mean, this was cooked up. It took God knows how long. I'd like to know exactly, deconstruct it and find out what was the, what was the philosophy behind this? What was the trajectory? What did they want to do? Did they really think that they could force this on the American public? And the other thing was, what if they mentioned anything about foreign policy in that document, John? Because that doesn't seem to be going too well either. I don't know if they did.
Well, as I recall from my reading of Project 2025, every chapter was written by different people, and every chapter talked about a different government agency. I don't think it was like, here's what our foreign policy should be, but here's what we're going to do to the State Department. Here's what we're going to do to the Department of Education. Here's what we're going to do to the Department of Health and Human Services. Every chapter was what they were going to do with the particular agency. So I don't know if they specifically said what our policy will or won't be. They probably want to make sure the State Department goes away as well.
But it was formed for the Republican Party because no Democrat would pick up that initiative. So I think that's interesting in itself because the Koch brothers were libertarians. That actually goes back to the John Birch Society back when I was a kid. You know, they didn't like Catholics, they didn't like Jews, they didn't like this person, they didn't like that person. But I think it's more libertarianism is every man for themselves kind of philosophy. Yeah. But anyway, Joan, just going forward, we've got to get rid of this nightmare because. I mean, so many cases are not going. We're not prosecuting any white criminals anymore because we don't have any lawyers to do it. We don't have any judges to do it. They have the courts tied up with nutty projects.
Yep.
And it's just crazy. Anyway, Joan, great talking to you. Have a great weekend. And thanks.
Thank you so much, Jim.
I'm glad those letters are coming down.
Yes, they are. Those letters are coming down. And I say we all just stand up and applaud when it happens. We are going to take a break for news, but remember, it is Friday. We are going to continue to take your calls. We are going to continue to read your texts. What did you think was important this week? Let me know. 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. See you after the news.
You're the only voice of reason on the radio.
You give me hope.
Having listened to you every day.
Thank you for your clear insight.
Always felt a little bit smarter.
I listen to you every single day.
I keep coming back to this station, and thank you for what you do.
On WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Hey, Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's Progressive Talk from TuneIn.
time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
It is Friday, in case you were wondering. We are watching all the live streams to see when Trump's name is removed from the Kennedy Center. Judges ruling late this morning shunted Donald Trump's appeal to the side, hopefully forever. And workers built a scaffolding this morning, and we are just waiting for them to climb the scaffolding and take his name off the building. She said, big sigh. Let's go to the phone lines. Margaret is on the line from Chicago. Hey, Margaret, how are you?
Oh, hanging in there, Joan. I just wanted to let people know that the National Park Service has been taking public comment on Trump's arch, Triumphal Arch, and Sunday is the last day that you can put in a comment.
Yes, and that, don't ask me why. I guess maybe he can't get any construction workers to just put it up. But, that is the requirement. It needs to be looked over by another organization. There needs to be a period of public comment, and all of that public comment is looked at and registered. So Margaret is exactly right. If you would like to have your voice heard on this monster, huge arch that will be nothing but an eyesore, taller than the Lincoln Memorial, completely blocking the view into Arlington National Cemetery. Now's the time. Now's the time.
So I hope so, because apparently there is already some construction equipment being assembled there. So we know, because I tried to get that in on Tom this morning, but we ran out of time. So I asked the congressman, is there any Republican opposition to it? And he's the one. He said that he's been seeing some equipment starting to be assembled.
I saw a picture on the news yesterday, and there wasn't any construction equipment, but I don't know if it was a same-day picture or if they were just using a picture they took earlier. I hope that's not the case. Man, oh man, we're going to, as soon as we get the scaffolding down off the Kennedy Center, we're going to have to take it over and dismantle everything that they're putting up for the arch. We can do that.
Because look, he tore down 1/3 of the White House with, we all
really
woke up one morning with that kind of crap going on. So
yeah, and people were afraid that he might pull that same thing actually with the Kennedy Center. You know how he said it was going to be closed for a couple of years for renovation? People were terrified that in the middle of the night, crews would come and tear it down, and that would be his idea of quote unquote renovation.
Right. Well, we can always fear a mysterious fire, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. So that's all I had to say for now, Joan.
Thanks, Margaret. Well, as soon as we get the Kennedy Center taken care of, we will now focus on the arch and whatever nonsense is happening there. Let's go back to the phone lines. Ron's on the line from Chicago. Hello, Ron.
Hello. They should take the scaffolding and start on the ballroom. That'll draw a crowd.
Yeah, really.
And now Trump will not give the Kennedy Center any money for repairs and remodeling because little Donnie's mad. So he gets and he's also the judge that ruled against him. Now he's texting his wife. I wonder what that's all about.
There's so many things we would like to know more about. I wouldn't hold your breath, though.
Yeah. And now also Trump wants his impeachment trial expunged. He wants Congress to say they're sorry. And the Speaker of the House, little Tiny Johnson, he said, "Oh yes, the Congress should say they're sorry." It's a little puppet.
Yes, he's a sock puppet. He actually is a sock puppet. That I don't know if a lot of people know that. He has no insides. It's all Trump's hand up inside him, moving his mouth, and that's exactly what Mikey Johnson is.
And also, if with the tornadoes, if a tornado goes across Illinois and goes into Indiana, that means that Illinois will not get any federal aid, and Indiana will. Is that where we are now?
Well, that wouldn't surprise me. Would it surprise you?
I don't know.
No. No, I mean, this is a president who's perfectly capable of that kind of nonsense. Ron, thank you so much for the call. I wanted to also share a text, and, we should have thought about this. Hi, Joan. I hope the crew taking the imbecile's name down are union. That's a very good question. I wonder if they are. I would hope so. By the way, I think I might have an idea what the holdup is in getting his name off. I've been watching the live feed, and it looks like it is pouring rain there right now. And even though the names are under an overhang, it's probably not the safest place to be on a 3-story scaffolding. So that may be what's going on, because all the workers, remember I told you they were all over the scaffolding. They have now gotten off and for at least now disappeared. But you know what? If it doesn't happen today, it'll happen tomorrow. And if it doesn't happen tomorrow, it'll happen Sunday. And whenever it happens, we will have joy in our hearts, won't we? Let's go to Roosevelt, who's on the line. Hello, Roosevelt.
Joan, sorry about the airplane over me, but I'm taking a walk and celebrating. I got a beer in my hand. And I'm almost, and I've been looking for songs. And funny you guys mentioned Robin Trower. I've seen him plenty of times. I'm a big-time hard rocker from the old days. He came from, since you always mentioned the fact that we have to celebrate on Friday, so he came from Procol Harum. Famous song, A Whiter Shade of Pale. Do you remember that one? Mm-hmm. And then there was another one called Conquistador. And he was...
Yes.
So that's where he came from, and in the style of Jimi Hendrix, basically in 74, the year I graduated. So I remember distinctly that song in particular and the whole album. Big time rock and roller. But let me ask you a question, Joe. Now I have a follow-up question to this. That's the variety. That's the song part of my statement. Now I have a question for you. What does this mean? Does this mean that the Kennedy Center is in the hands of the Kennedy, the daughter of John F. Kennedy now, or what?
They're going to leave the John F. Kennedy name where it is, and they are just going to take off the Donald Trump, which was put above it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry about the wind, because there's a lot of wind out here.
Yeah, be careful.
Trees down here by Midway Airport. The city's out here clearing up everything because there's trees knocked down. Oh, that's a mess over here. It hit real hard. I don't know about you, Joan, but it hit real hard over here by Midway. So,
well, it was kind of hit or miss where it really did the most damage.
And one more thing, Joan. This is an indication of what's going to happen to all the statues. Remember what happened to the guy in Iraq, Saddam Hussein? Well, the statue came down. They roped it like a cow, and they brought it down. Well, the same thing's going to happen to this guy. Wherever his name, I don't know about the $250 bill that he has planned, but you got to bring this down. He's bad. He's bad karma for New York. He's bad karma for this country, and he's a cooler. Pay attention to that movie, John. I don't know if you ever saw it. Alec Baldwin, great movie called The Cooler.
I haven't heard of it, but maybe it's time to watch it.
You got to see it. You got to see it. But everything, we said it before, you and me, that everything this guy touches, so gets near, gets ruined, gets destroyed.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roosevelt.
I'm going to be on my second beer now.
Okay, well, happy weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
One of our texters wanted to know how to make a public comment on the Arch. I believe that midnight on Monday is when public comment stops. But the website I think is easiest is savingplaces.org. Savingplaces.org. And the site is the National. National Trust for Historic Preservation. It takes you right there. And you scroll down, and it says your to-do list. Review the comments, read more about the project, submit your comments to the National Park Service. And there is a lovely little link there just for you. So have fun with that. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more calls right after this.
WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter.
Don't turn that dial. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now.
A fair balance where the facts come out.
On WCPT 820.
It is Friday, and we take your calls and read your texts for the first half of the show. Let us go to the phone lines. Our good friend Paul is on the line from Seattle. Hey, Paul, how are you?
Hi, Joan. Well, I'm sorry about the rain and the foul weather for the removal of the Trump's name.
But you know what, Paul? Somebody texted in that they hope the rain lasts all weekend. And, you know, his little wrestling thing is supposed to be outside. And wouldn't that be fun if it got rained out?
No, you stole my thunder. That one, but
sorry about that.
But indeed, but you know what? I think he'll show up for about as long as he did for the basketball game, because he is not capable of being in public for longer than that. So he might make an appearance, and that'll be it for him. But in terms of this memorandum of agreement with Iran, first of all, I wonder if it will even happen. But secondly, you know how Trump keeps saying, oh, they're desperate to make a deal, which means what? It means that he's desperate to make a deal. That's what it really means, right?
Yes.
We know that.
Yes.
All projection. It's all projection all the time from Trump. But I'm really curious to know if we will see somebody, I can't count on the news media, unfortunately, to even bother to read it. Just, we got a deal. The strait's going to be opening, isn't it? And the stock market, we go, yay! And it's going up 10,000 points. But I don't understand any of this crap. But I'd stay as far away from the stock market as I could, considering what happened to me in 2000, the other crash. I don't trust it at all. It's a completely crooked thing. But will we get to read it? Will we get to see? I'm really curious to know how much we are going to give up, even compared to, I hope that the Democrats and the news media, if they're responsible enough, will compare this memorandum agreement to the Obama, what was it called, the JPCOA or whatever. First of all, compare it to that, because remember they said what a failure it was. It wasn't perfect, and even Democrats say, "Oh, it wasn't perfect," which totally annoys me. Why do Democrats say that? It wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing. No, it was a lot better than nothing. And as a matter of fact,
heck yes,
it worked perfectly for what it was designed to do. So why Democrats say it wasn't perfect, but it was better than nothing, is another Democratic self-put down, which just angers me. But I want to see what we're giving up, because Trump is not going to want to say, he's so desperate to get the strait open and see prices coming down so that he can somehow twist it. Now it's patriotic. These high prices are patriotic. And by the way, I have heard he said inflation is patriotic, or the spin is. And honestly, sometimes I listen to radio in Michigan, WJR in Detroit, and I was hearing callers calling me and saying, I'll pay $5 a gallon if it means Iran's not going to get a nuclear weapon. I would like to see if this memorandum of agreement has anything to do there won't be one syllable about Iran backing down on a nuclear weapon. It really won't. There won't be. And so,
well, there have been so many different versions released publicly. You know, one version says no nuclear material, no nuclear weapons. But is that what Donald Trump wants, or is that what Iran has agreed to? We don't know, and there's no way to tell.
I don't see that he's been so outmaneuvered that because he has put himself in the position of desperation. And I've said it before, war is not about military might. It's about interests. And it's not about how much you destroy the opponent's interests. It's how much of your own interests you are losing or stand to gain or are gaining. And with the prices already, we have lost economically. And that's what I mean by interest. We've already lost unless it gets so good that, the prices go so much lower than they were on February 28th. They have to go that much, as much as they've increased, they would have to go that much lower for the same amount of time just to break even. I don't see that happen. In fact, I don't see gasoline. Of course it's not going to happen. Of course it's not going to happen. No. Gasoline will never be lower. I would predict never lower than $3.50 a gallon in the Midwest, even, and probably never lower than $4.50 a gallon. Well, remember what happened with COVID and the price of cereal in the grocery store? Because there was a supply chain issue. Breakfast cereal got really expensive. And when COVID was over and the supply chain was moving again, did the price of cereal come back to what it was before? No. It did not. Same's going to happen with gas. It may come down, but I bet you it doesn't come down all the way. Generic Raisin Bran, before 2019, the store generic was $1.99 a box for a 12-ounce box. After COVID, it was $2.99, and it's now you can't get it less for $3.99. So, the cereal has never come down. It's only gone up, and now you'll pay for a family-sized box. You'll pay at least $5, between $5 and $6, at least out here. Yeah. So I don't see any prices coming down. It's never going to come back to what it was before this stupid war and this stupid man and a weak-kneed, spineless, gutless party that cannot stop him from destroying the country. And I don't know. I don't hear Democrats. Maybe they're keeping their powder dry. Wait until they see the whites of their eyes. But I'm telling you, they better take advantage of this and read and compare what we are now living with compared to Obama's failed JPCOA, which was, it was a disaster because it didn't get rid of. And will this agreement get rid of all the funding for terrorism? Like, that was supposedly the knock on Obama's agreement on the JPCOA, is it didn't stop them funding for terrorism. Well, it was a nuclear agreement. It's like they wanted it all rolled in one. So let's put the same CNN is reporting that that's one of the things that Trump is asking for, that Iran sign a pledge that they will not fund any terrorist groups. Like, how are we going to enforce that one, folks? Well, I would think they would say we don't. That's the first thing. I think they would say we don't anyway. What do you mean? We don't do that. So I wouldn't. If I didn't do that, if I were someone who didn't do that, a party that didn't do something, I wouldn't sign a pledge that says I won't do it, because that makes it look like I did do it before. That's like when you go stop beating have you stopped beating your wife yet? That's one of those agreements. So nobody who's smart in negotiations would do that if they weren't already, and they would maintain, whether they do or they don't, they would maintain that they don't fund terrorism. They would maintain that, so they wouldn't put that in there. So I think Trump's going to lose all the way around. I really do. And it wouldn't be, it would be what we would expect. I mean, this guy's never been a businessman. He didn't understand what he was getting into. He didn't understand how to get out of it. So, it's not going to be a good deal. There's no way. He may tell us it's a good deal. He may tell us that. That doesn't make it true. well, you can't negotiate when all his personal issues are wrapped up in everything. That's the first thing. I mean, that is the first thing. First of all, in like mediation negotiations, you air the two parties' personal issues. You let them air those and say, this is what I hate. And then you say, okay, and this is what we won't talk about going forward. You have to get to your interests. So that people know what the difference is. These are your issues. These are your interests. So we can't really talk about your issues. Those are how you feel about, personal situation or whatever. But when Trump, that's all he does is talk about his issues. There's no way. And that just backs him into a corner further and further. And all the other party has to do is just sit and wait for him to have his little toddler tantrum and then keep focused on their interests. And that's how they win. And that's how they win a war, even though they lost militarily.
Yep. I hear you.
Yep.
Paul, thank you so much for the call. Always great to talk with you. Let's we got room for one more call. Let's go to Kankakee, where Carl's on the line. Hi, Carl.
Hey, Joan. Great to be talking with you. I don't say it enough. I appreciate all the callers. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Are we connected?
Yes, we are. That was very sweet of you to say.
Okay, yeah. Real quick, Bridge of Sighs, great album. Boom. I love the Nod Father. My contribution is Sleepy Satan. He may be the devil, but he's a hell of a guy. Does he know how to throw a birthday party or what?
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see. I hope it gets rained out, but that's probably not very charitable of me, is it, Carl?
Is there a place on this peace document for Israel to sign?
Good question. They apparently are staying out of this. They want no part of it. First, they claimed they weren't consulted. Now they're saying that they want to keep attacking Lebanon. So I doubt he can get Bibi Netanyahu to do what he wants. I really don't think.
There's no peace. Bigger picture, we're almost on the 4th of July. And where were you on the bicentennial 4th of July, Joan?
I have given it absolutely no thought, Carl. Day by day, I work really hard to keep my head above water, which means I don't really have what it takes to look too far forward. I know that a lot of people, by the way, are celebrating July 3rd as the holiday. And there may be other hosts from CPT who are off that day, but I'm going to be here. So if on July 3rd, which is the Friday, you find yourself at loose ends, I will be here. Give me a call and we will chat.
Okay, but I'm talking about 1976. Where were you then?
Well, I was probably in grade school.
Well, yeah. Well, did you do something happy back then?
Man, oh man.
That's my.
Yeah, you're right.
Time.
Yeah.
And it ain't now.
Oops. Carl, we're really late getting to a break. Thank you so much. Always good to hear from you. And I love the pictures of flowers and trees that you send.
It's a joy.
For me, too. Thank you, Carl. We are going to take a break. We'll be back with more after this. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Find rebates and discounts on energy-efficient products at ComEd.com/home savings.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Before we move along today, word has just come out that the artist David Hockney has died at the age of 88. He has been famous. My goodness. He's been famous since the 60s. He did these iconic pictures that the blues, there was a lot of time there was blue and people were wearing blue and the sky was blue and the pool was blue. That's what I really remember best about him, but he has been a famous artist for, for a very, very, very long time. We don't know. He was 88 years old. We don't have a cause of death, but the release is that he died peacefully. We should all be so lucky. Okay, moving on. We do something here that is called Stories from the States. It is a podcast that is put out by the States Newsroom. This is an organization that has reporters in every state house in the country. Because, folks, there is almost nothing more important than what happens in the states. It is a template for some of the Republican ideas. Hey, it passed in Tennessee. Let's see if it'll pass in Iowa. And the local people who we elect have a lot more to do with how we live our lives than our Congress people do when all is said and done. Chris Fitzsimon joins us to talk about the podcast that the States Project does, States Newsroom does. And it's called Stories from the State. And Chris is here to tell us about this week's issue. Hey, Chris, how are you?
I am well, Joan. How about yourself?
I am peachy. I don't think I'm going to be seeing you for a while. So let me say happy 4th of July right now.
Yeah. And to you, it's going to be a busy few Fridays, I think. So
yes.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you.
And the title.
I didn't know if I was going to talk to you live or if you were going to be on the way to Washington for the UKC fight.
Well, my private jet is standing by, Chris. I
wondered about that.
Yeah. Do you know they said they're expecting 125,000 people? How is that even possible? How is that even possible?
I don't think it is possible. I think that's the kind of math that he used in his first inaugural address, where he
look
did
as
some
far
weird
as
geometry
I can
there.
See, there's people.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that seems a little on the optimistic side.
That's right.
Well, I can.
So anyway, this week.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
This week we're revisiting something that we had talked about before. We have a special guest, Congressman Cleo Fields from Louisiana, a longtime a member of the Congressional Black Caucus, a civil rights leader. He's been in public life in Louisiana for more than 30 years. He represents the people of a district in Louisiana that is now has been basically eliminated from the state of Louisiana. Louisiana, has about a third of its citizens are African American. They have 6 seats in Congress. So right now they have 2, which is roughly equivalent to the population breakdown in Louisiana. After the Calais decision, the Louisiana legislature and the governor, of course, immediately moved, and that was the basis of the suit. They eliminated Congressman Fields' district. So this year there will be one minority district, and they're already making noises about, after this election, of maybe eliminating the last one. So we are seeing. I wish this is one of those hard issues to explain to folks who understandably don't want to pay attention to politics, and you say redistricting and their eyes glaze over. But this is a great example of really why States Newsroom exists, because this is happening all over the South. And it will mean that the members of Congress and the General Assembly in southern states will be much whiter, will be much more conservative, much more Republican dominated this time, and most importantly in 2028. And we'll have a long way to, I think, a lot to say, maybe not this year, but certainly in 2028, about who controls Congress, and think about the ramifications of that. And it's all because of what I think is a misreading and of the Voting Rights Act, and also just a retrenchment of how far we have come in civil rights. That we passed this in 1965, and we're making progress, and here we are now turning back the clock. So we talked to Congressman Fields, and we also talked to one of our reporters, Jessica Holdman from South Carolina, where they decided not to do it, not because they were offended by the last-minute efforts to redraw lines, but because so many people had already early voted in South Carolina that several members of the Republican Party there didn't want to disenfranchise the people who had voted, but I have a feeling that they will also come back after the midterm election and sometime and redraw those districts where Representative Jim Clyburn, maybe the most famous member of the Congressional Black Caucus, the one who really jump-started Joe Biden's presidential campaign in 2024, has represented that district forever. So it's a really interesting, and Representative Fields is very honest and frank, and it's a really interesting conversation.
Well, obviously, African Americans would like to be represented in government and should be represented in government. Obviously, this is going to anger a lot of people, maybe motivate a lot of people to get politically involved. But Chris, not every white person is a power-hungry racist. I have to believe in Louisiana, there are white people of good conscience who don't want this to happen. You're right. It's like turning the clock back 100 years.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And Congressman Fields spoke about that. And there were protesters at the State House in Louisiana of all colors who were upset about this. I think it is going to galvanize the black vote in a lot of the southern states and other places in the country in statewide races where, you can't redistrict a Senate seat. And also, as you mentioned, a lot of white voters who were upset and thought that the country was better than this. So this is one of the, in some ways, it's a sleeper issue for the midterms, because I do think it does galvanize folks and gives people another reason to reject sort of the policies of this administration, of this Supreme Court, of the push to, they've sort of perverted the words colorblind and sort of have everything turned upside down. But I think that will have a major impact, I think, on this election.
People say the Republicans now are like the dog that caught the car. They are going so far to the right. Oh yes, let's get the Supreme Court to say we can redraw. We don't need any black districts because, of course, just between you and me, they tend to be Democratic, and we don't like that. The overreach, I think, has to be so offensive to a lot of people. I mean, here in Illinois, we're gerrymandered Democratic, and we used to be gerrymandered Republican, but people get representation. I mean, there are still. If there's a lot of black people that live in a certain area, I don't know, call me crazy. I think they should be represented in government. And I found it ridiculous that the Supreme Court, and please, I'm going to reduce this to its lowest common denominator. To me, the Supreme Court said, yeah, you can gerrymander, not for race. No, not that. But if you're doing it for politics, that's cool.
Right. Yeah, I mean, they're sort of winking and nodding and all along the way. And, the ultimate problem, of course, and I think I may have mentioned this in one of our earlier conversations, is that gerrymandering on its face is insane. And there was a bill introduced in Congress, a national bill to ban gerrymandering in states. And every Republican member of Congress, I believe, voted against that, or at least didn't vote for it. So the people, when given a chance, always vote against gerrymandering. And I think part of that is because people want the community, the phrase communities of interest. They want to live in a coherent congressional district, and both parties have gerrymandered for political advantage, and both parties are doing it now after Trump sort of started this race to the bottom when he, in effect, ordered Texas to redraw the districts. So we're in this race to the bottom to see how crazy the districts can be for partisan advantage. I don't know, like many things that he has done, I don't know when we put the genie back in the bottle. I do think a Democratic Senate, a U.S. Senate, a Democratic U.S. House, if that happens, there'll be a big push to pass some kind of redistricting reform nationally. And I'm sure Trump will want to veto it and most likely veto it, but at least it'll bring the attention back to everybody's minds about the obvious way to solve these problems.
I also think the Supreme Court is planting the seeds of their dissolution, because they are clearly they're not originalists. They're not looking at the letter of the law. They have no respect for precedent. They are ruling on cases in what is pretty obviously a very partisan way. And you know what? So the Democrats in 2028, expand the court, and suddenly their far-right idealism isn't going to hold sway. And it is decisions like this that are going to make people get behind the legislators. You know, expanding the court has been mentioned before, and people are always like, oh, that's a bad idea. I have a feeling if it comes up again, people are going to be, well, you better expand the court, because otherwise it doesn't matter what laws we pass. This court is going to strike down any laws they don't like, that don't fit with their white Christian nationalist agenda. I think this court is overreaching. I think the people who are gerrymandering are overreaching, and I have to believe the pendulum is going to swing back, Chris.
I do too. I do too. The interesting thing will be when the pendulum swings back, how are some of the people who have been, upset about these procedural things, but maybe philosophically aren't progressive, how they sort of react. And it's sort of like some of the people who've been hired in the federal government who we know are white supremacists, or people who have these crazy backgrounds who aren't qualified. And the Democrats, if they take over, obviously will get rid of those people. And there will be some people saying, oh, you're just like the Republicans. That's what they did when they took office. That's the problem with norm busting. But I think common sense might prevail. I noticed that Pete Buttigieg said recently that nowhere in the Constitution does it say there should be 9 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court.
Exactly.
And you mentioned there have been efforts to do this in the past, which have failed. I think the other interesting thing would be whether it's packing the court or whether it's term limiting the court to say, 20 years, 25 years, whether there's a retirement age. I think there's a lot of proposals that will be out there that will be debated. That's going to be a fascinating debate if Congress changes hands. I still think the House is likely to, and the Senate seems up in the air. But Trump in some ways has forced a reckoning on all these things that we took for granted because they weren't spelled out in the letter of the law. And I think in the next 10, 15 years, there's going to be a lot of spelling out of things that we didn't think we had to worry about.
Exactly. And a lot of things that were guardrails and norms and just ethical behavior, I think, is now going to have to be written up in legislation, and not just written up, but legislation that carries a real penalty. I mean, look at the emoluments clause, oh yeah, so what? What are you going to do about it? It has to be spelled out, and there has to be a real consequence.
Yeah, I definitely think you're going to see that. And I think there'll be some Republicans who go along with that just because they won't want the next president, whoever he or she is, to do the same thing. It is amazing when you think back not too many years ago, the things that we thought were a scandal to what we have now. And even this ridiculous fight on the White House grounds and the money that's being raised for that. It's just the amount of it in some ways is so overwhelming that it's impossible, I think, for most people to understand. Yeah. I think that's by design. That's the whole plan, is that there's so much of it so often in so many places, it's hard to focus on even one thing.
Exactly. The Steve Bannon tsunami of poop is...
That's right.
Yes, remember that? It's what they're doing, and in some cases it works. I'm talking to Chris Fitzsimon. The States Newsroom does a podcast called Stories from the States, where they focus on one or more issues going on in one or more states. We are going to return to this talk right after a break.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hi, it's Joan Esposito, and I want to tell you about 120 Life. 120 Life is a drink made with ingredients that help support healthy blood pressure. Yeah, blood pressure. My mom struggled with high blood pressure, took medicine for almost her entire adult life. And for many of us, high blood pressure runs in the family. 120 Life is a great tasting fruit and vegetable drink designed to improve blood pressure. Put it to the test for a couple of weeks. Check your blood pressure. See if it works for you. Some people reported results in as little as 2 weeks. And you can also enjoy 120 Life like I do because it's a great fruit drink. To try it, go online to 120life.com. That's 120life.com. If your high blood pressure doesn't come down in a couple of weeks, you can get a full refund. And you can get a 20% discount on your order. Use the code JOAN, JOAN, for 20% off your order. These statements have not been approved by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm talking with Chris Fitzsimon about the Stories from the States podcast, which is a podcast done by the States Newsroom organization. And, you know, Chris, I was thinking during the break, you know, we were talking about how some of the things that were just sort of norms before need to be put into written law that carries a punishment. But looking at what the Supreme Court has done about all this gerrymandering, we had a law. We had the Voting Rights Act. And the Supreme Court has whittled away at that act until there's basically nothing left. So how do we make sure, if we do write laws that try to bring some sort of fairness or, dare I say, equity to elections and politics, how do we make sure that the Supreme Court won't say, oh, yeah, but you know what, precedent, we said, you know, the Voting Rights Act was no good, and this is kind of like that, so this is no good, too?
Well, it's a great question, but one of the things talking about whether or not we expand the court, remember how we got here. We had a justice retire when Obama was president. He nominated Merrick Garland, and they sat on it for I think Garland was nominated maybe in March. It might be. I stand to be corrected. And they said, well, it's too close to the election. Then we had Ruth Bader Ginsburg pass away a few weeks before the election, and they rammed through an appointment. So if they had held to the norms, the court would look much different now. Every
there's
decision
Mitch
would
McConnell.
be close.
Thank you, Mitch McConnell.
Right. That's right. So maybe, does that mean that if we had term limits, if we had retirement ages, if we had, there are some proposals that each president has a minimum number of justices, however you figure that out, that they appoint.
Every president, how would we have to stagger that if every president got to appoint one? They would have to what? Well, it depends on, I suppose, how many we had. But
right.
That would fit in with term limits.
Right.
And that seems fair. Every president gets one.
Right. Unless there's obviously someone dies or retires or whatever. But so there's a lot of ways. But the fact that Trump is the world winner clearly at breaking the norms and the guardrails that you spoke of. But he's not the first one. The Republican Senate, the Republican Party in Washington did that with the way this current court is appointed. So, this has been happening gradually, and he just sort of exploded onto the scene and did it in a more boisterous or nuclear way almost. But the reason that we're here now, the reason this court has the makeup that it has, is because they ignored these norms and guardrails and didn't really care what the public thought, what traditions had been established, what President Obama had the right to do, just like every other president. I think that's where we got here. And then we're either going to have to address those immediately as soon as there's a change in the government, or in some organized way so this doesn't happen again to either side.
Yeah. There was people have slammed Obama, saying that he should have put more pressure on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was quite old and quite frail and quite sick, right, that he should have put more pressure on her to resign. And he did not. He sort of left it up to her, and man, she was hanging on with both hands. But at that time, we were foolish enough to think that a reasonable person like Hillary Clinton would be elected to the presidency over Donald Trump. Do you think that to avoid another Ruth Bader Ginsburg situation, will Thomas or Alito retire while Donald Trump is still president, so those seats can still be made conservative?
That is a great question, and there's a lot of discussion about that. And if that was going to happen, you would think it would have to happen before this Congress, before this Senate changed hands. Let's assume for a second, I don't know if they will or not, but if the Democrats manage to take over the Senate in November, then Trump would only have a Republican senator for a couple more months if he wanted to get a nomination through, because the Democratic Senate is not going to appoint certainly a far-right conservative, the likes of which he's already appointed. So that there'll be, I think the pressure to do that will dramatically increase if the Democrats take the Senate. If they don't, obviously, the Republicans have until the end of Trump's presidency to try to make one or both of those people step down. So that's another sort of subplot in what happens in November, I think.
Yeah. Well, they've made noises, but I think that kind of prestige and power is very difficult to walk away from. Maybe with, Clarence Thomas has that good friend of his, Harlan Crow, the guy who bought him like the fancy RV and flies him on a private jet and entertains him on vacations. And, what was it? Puts one of his nephews through school, bought his mother's house. I mean, if Harlan Crow says, Clarence, you really ought to retire, and so we could get another conservative in that seat. And you know what? I'll write you a check for like $10 million. We'll figure out a way to justify it. I think it's not just the prestige. It's not just they don't want to give up the power. I think it's, Clarence Thomas said a long time ago that he wasn't making enough money as a Supreme Court justice. And man, the wealthy Republicans really stepped up. So I think they could be bought. I don't know about Alito. He's a weird one. But I think Thomas could be bought off.
Well, I don't know. I think we'll have that answer pretty soon, depending on how the election goes. And, just imagine, that Trump, this is going to sound odd, but as extreme as we all think, or a lot of us think his choices were his first term, compare how he's behaved his second term compared to his first term, and you wonder who in the world he would appoint if he had a choice. I think, it could be even more extreme than the people are on there. And I think even if he appoints someone and they don't get on, I think that will actually fuel efforts when power changes for a reform of the court or expansion of the court or term limits or age limits or something, because we can't keep operating this way. Yeah.
There's a lot of confidence that Democrats should be able to take back the House of Representatives. Originally, the word was, you're not going to get the Senate, too many red states. And then it was like, well, maybe you might get the Senate, or it's like 50-50. And now more and more people are saying, you know what? I really think that Democrats could take the Senate. If you had to bet, if you had money to put on this, where would you put it?
Ooh, boy, I would say I think a likely scenario is 50-50, which means, of course, then the Republicans control the Senate because they have the vice presidency. I don't think it's out of the question that the Democrats could take over. They're going to have to win in places like Iowa, Maine, which we've all been following that controversy, and maybe Texas. Maybe there's an outside chance an independent in Nebraska, I think, has some reasonable chance. Alaska is another big one. They're going to have to win the majority of those, in addition to holding Georgia, winning North Carolina, where they're now favored significantly. So the entire election is going to be decided in, 4 or 5 states that a year ago, nobody thought the Democrats had a chance in. And it's Ohio is another one I should have said. And Sherrod Brown is actually ahead in the latest poll. So I think if the election were held today, the Democrats might win 51 seats. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens between now and November. And then remember, John Fetterman isn't a reliable vote. So that's a whole nother question.
Yeah, really. Good God. Chris Fitzsimons has been here to talk about the Stories from the States podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Chris, I will talk to you sometime after the 4th.
All right.
Thank
you, Joan.
We are going to take a break for news. We'll be back with much more after this.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive.
Quite frankly, I get most of my news from you.
Joan Esposito.
Y'all ready for this?
On WCPT 820.
I am very happy to welcome to our show Daniel Squadron, who is president and co-founder of a group called Future Now. Future Now happens to be our parent company, but that's not why Daniel's here. Daniel's here because he has written a book called The Fourth Branch, and that's what we want to talk to him about today. Daniel, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
It's Friday. How can you not be peachy on a Friday, right?
Exactly right. This is the gateway to our weekend.
Yes, indeed. I read a review of The Fourth Branch, and it said something kind of interesting, unusual. And, it said, if there are too many political books in your life, pick up The Fourth Branch and at the very least read the intro and chapter 3. Which, of course, made me go back to my PDF and take a look at the intro and take a look at Chapter 3. Intro is, what you might expect, a lot of statistics. And would you say the intro is kind of like what we need to know to read the book and who it's for?
I think that's right. The idea behind the whole book is to help people really understand how power works in our politics and what they can do about it. The answer is surprising to most people, since it isn't in the Oval Office or even the United States Capitol in Washington, D.C. The answer is in the 50 state houses around the country. But that's such a shocking idea to people that there's a couple of things they need to know. And the first, exactly as you say, is just how much power states have. I sometimes say to folks, what's a domestic policy issue, in this country that you care about? And I haven't been stumped yet. Every single answer I've gotten, in the last 15 years, state legislatures have done more harm or good on the issue than Congress has.
Absolutely. That's what drives me crazy when, say, for a primary election, we get such a lousy turnout. I bang the drum all the time. And I tell people not just state elections, but, your municipality, who's on the water reclamation board, who are your village officials, and what kinds of rules are they putting in place? What kind of judges are you voting to retain or not retain? Because those are the people that you are far more likely to have contact with than you're going to be to have with Tammy Duckworth or Dick Durbin.
Absolutely. And, I know how much credibility you have, but don't take your word or my word for it. President Trump has been obsessed with state legislatures for the last few years, because of just how important they are to him because of how much power they have.
I've also seen in a lot of red states, Republican-run legislatures almost using their state government as like a petri dish. Okay, we're going to try to go after abortion. Even though it's been voted into our state constitution, we're going to come at it this way and that way. And if a state has success with one of those measures, dollars to donuts, you're going to see it crop up in another state.
Absolutely. And I'd say it goes even farther than that. The reason that the Supreme Court was able to undo the right to reproductive health care and abortion in a decision a few years ago wasn't because, it's some magic power with a magic wand. The Supreme Court ended Roe v. Wade that protected abortion rights because of a Mississippi state law. This is actually how I opened the book, with David Barria, the former minority leader of the Mississippi legislature, who was in the chamber. He voted against the bill that killed Roe v. Wade and doesn't even remember it, because as he tells it, bill after bill after bill was being run through the legislature designed to change the federal rule. Just this spring, the state of Louisiana's actions on drawing congressional maps went up to the Supreme Court, and they gutted the Voting Rights Act. I'm sure you've talked a lot about that on your show. all of these changes to federal policy are actually coming from state legislatures. So there's both a petri dish, as you talk about, for the most extreme possible outcomes within states, but also using states to change the entire direction of the country. Yes, and I don't know if regular folks who aren't obsessed with politics even realize this, but sometimes if there is a group that wants to change, wants to get some kind of change at the Supreme Court level, they will hunt for someone who fits the bill of the kind of person who could bring a case that could end up before the Supreme Court. That these people are sought after, they're cherry-picked with the intent of getting it through the state and getting it in front of the Supreme Court to make some of these changes you're talking about. Absolutely. And so, you know, what I'd say is don't just trust you and me and Donald Trump. Trust the Supreme Court and the right-wing political operatives who've been on a 50-plus year campaign to get their vision of the country enacted through the states, while most people were focused in Washington, D.C. The exciting thing about this, despite just how disturbing the history that we're talking about is that actually it's relatively easy to do something about it. A very small amount of new engagement or focus from regular people changes states. And that's what the fourth branch, my book, is really about. Once you understand how much power lies in states, I give you a couple of simple, I call it Connect Four. It's not chess, it's just Connect Four, a couple of simple paths to have a bigger impact than you ever could have imagined. I always say that a group of friends, if they decided to make an issue that they cared about, the most important issue in their state, within a year, if they use their time, network, resources, and expertise, they could do it. Or if they wanted to get involved in campaigns, it's often cheaper to flip an entire legislative chamber than it is one congressional seat. These races often come down to a few dozen votes or fewer. And so a few dozen more people who understand the power and engage with it is game-changing in a way that, if we're being honest with each other, and I know that's what you do, it's not possible to have that effect at the federal level. Mm-hmm. Daniel, you've written a book about the importance of these state elections. I bang the drum on this show all the time, but you know and I know that if we were in a room with 10 people and we asked each of them, name your state rep and your state senator, I'd be surprised if one of the 10 could name those people. Why can't we get the importance of this into people's psyches in a deeper way? Well, look, we need to give people a little bit, let people off the hook a little bit here so far, right? Because some people think of state legislatures as, a bunch of kind of amateur politicians who are go up to a state capitol and roam the halls with lobbyists and are sort of shabby and desperate. And if we're being honest, there's an extent to which it can feel that way sometimes in a legislature. Anyone who's ever served or ever advocated would admit it. Here's the thing. Even though it's not where the glamour is, state legislatures are where the power is. And so I actually think it's not about saying to people, eat your vegetables, think more about local politics. I think it's about saying to people, you tear your hair out when you hear about federal politics. And we understand why. You feel like a spectator to the destruction of your democracy. But if you just take that time, energy, and focus and turn it to local politics, both in your own state and across the country, that feeling of frustration and powerlessness will flip on its head. Mm-hmm. You'll suddenly have stories that are inspiring and power to make a change that's bigger than you thought possible. You'll feel like you're a participant in the democracy. It's really, Joan, about just convincing people take a step back from the federal politics for a second. Enter your political engagement, your role as a citizen in our democracy from the most local angle, just like the framers and founders would have had it, and see if it changes your relationship to your community and your government.
Absolutely. And, I always encourage people, if you don't feel like you can do it on your own, look for a local branch of your Democratic Party. Look for a local activist group that you can be a part of. And League of Women Voters. I mean, there's so many ways that you can educate yourself without, going crazy with this. Daniel, before we go to break, I promised Aaron Kleinman that I would include this in our interview. Aaron Kleinman wants me to ask you if hiring him was quite possibly the best decision you ever made.
Wow, I didn't know you were opening up the phones to callers. There's an inside joke there. For those who don't know Aaron Kleinman, he's the incredibly talented author of the Radio Free America newsletter that
we have Aaron
affiliated.
On for hours and hours, because we talk every time there's a primary. We have Aaron on and we spend an hour taking it apart. So this audience knows that he is, like a senior political person with Heartland Signal. Yeah, they know who Aaron is.
Well, I'll let your listeners determine. Let's leave it up to the listeners if it was wise or not. I've been very grateful to get to know Aaron and learn an enormous amount from him and read his newsletter assiduously. But we'll leave it up to the listeners to decide if it was wise or not.
Okay, I'll tell him. I think he's going to be hurt, but I'll share that with him next time he's on. Daniel Squadron.
I think he'll be impressed. He knows how I work.
Daniel Squadron and I are going to take a break. He's the president and co-founder of Future Now. He has a book out now called The Fourth Branch: How State Government Can Save Our Union. We're going to continue this talk right after a break.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Daniel Squadron is president and co-founder of the organization that shepherds WCPT and Heartland Signal around, Future Now. He has written a book, The Fourth Branch: How State Government Can Save Our Union. Daniel, I mentioned that one review I read said, if you don't read any other chapters, you got to make sure you read chapter 3, which then I, of course, went back and revisited. And I thought this was really fascinating because one of the things that I tell listeners all the time is I'm no expert on party history, political history, sometimes even American history. And I love to talk with someone who really knows what they're talking about. And it seems to me chapter 3 is going back to the 1970s and bringing us forward. Tell the listeners about it, if you would.
Absolutely. The far right wing is easily today mixed up with the establishment of Republican Party, but that wasn't always true. It used to be a bunch of folks who were trying to change the Republican Party and make it much more conservative and hard right. In the early 1970s, they looked around and said the best way to achieve our goals is to do it through the states, basically because that's an easier place to do it. And so a guy named Paul Weyrich, who I'm sure no one who listens has heard of, but they've heard of his work. He founded the Heritage Foundation, the author of Project 2025. He also founded at the same time something called ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is a civic organization of conservative state lawmakers around the country. And he did that because he wanted the Republican Party to become much more focused on using government to demand conservative, traditional religious values. Similarly, in the 1970s, the Koch brothers, who people have heard of, I'm sure, and think of as big Republicans, they didn't like the Republican Party either back then. They were libertarians. And they started their own institution called the Cato Institute to push forward their libertarianism. One of them even ran on the ticket against Ronald Reagan in 1980 as the vice presidential nominee. Can you believe that?
Boy, I didn't remember that at all.
Over time, in the 1980s, they became Republicans and also built the Koch network to have influence in states. Even Karl Rove, who was George W. Bush's, political expert, in 2010 focused all of his energy, that big Tea Party year, on raising and spending money to win state legislatures. As he said, whoever controls the states controls Congress. This entire effort was happening on the right, and meanwhile on the left, there was no focus. In fact, it wasn't just these outside players. A person everyone's familiar with, who I mentioned just previously, Ronald Reagan, invited the lawmakers from ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Council, to the White House every year. I talk about a scene, Reagan's 8th year in office, where he's very nostalgic for the 8 years they've spent together. And then a former colleague of mine in the past, I was in the New York State Senate, Owen Johnson, state lawmaker, was called to the podium because he was the chair of that organization. And that history and that focus at the highest levels of power in the party is just not matched on our side. And so when I was serving in the legislature, I slowly learned some of this history because those of us, I'm a Democrat, those of us on the other side of the aisle didn't have any of these resources. What's really chilling is this tradition of the right wing focusing more on legislatures has continued today. Donald Trump has personally called state lawmakers over the last year. He called Texas state lawmakers and asked them to draw new congressional maps so that Republicans would win more seats in the middle of the decade, which is, as you know, not how it's normally done. He called Indiana state lawmakers, and when Republican state senators stood up to him and said no, he took names and his allies funded a super PAC against them. Just a couple of weeks ago, it was reported he called South Carolina state lawmakers who were standing up for his redistricting pitch. And that hasn't started in the last year. Back in 2020, weeks before January 6th, Trump called the leaders of the Michigan legislature, the Assembly Speaker and Senate President, to the Oval Office and asked them to block certification of Michigan's presidential vote. One of them agreed to do it. If the other one had, January 6th never would have occurred because the dominoes would have started to fall and the rightful result of that 2020 election would have been much more likely to be undermined. This entire structure is in part because for the country's history, the right wing has been more connected to the idea of states' rights. The idea of states' rights was, of course, a call early in the country's history to allow slavery in some states. It was after the Civil War, the call to allow horrible, heinous segregation laws, what was called Jim Crow. And then after World War II and the New Deal, states' rights, and Reagan took this up in a big way, was used to claim that we shouldn't have popular federal programs like Social Security and Medicaid because the states should do that instead. Of course, it wasn't true that the point was the states doing it. The point was a belief that government shouldn't help people's lives. But this whole history means that we're living today in a world where the centralized power in the federal government of Donald Trump and his allies is a risk to the very founding principles of this country. And for the first time in a long time, the decentralized power of states is actually the best path we have for those core American values that, which self-evident, we're all created equal, that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, consent of the governed, and true competitive democracy. Today, we need to focus on states to protect those values, even though for many decades, focusing on states has been an excuse to undermine them.
Daniel, I've read people saying that the Republicans wised up about how important the states were and started planning and trying to get more Republicans elected to state legislatures, and that suddenly we see these state laws that are, going up to the Supreme Court, and it seems like these state legislatures have outsized power. And some people have said to me, this is a fault of the Democrats. Democrats took their eye off of state legislatures and weren't doing the same kind of building and work that Republicans were doing. Do you think that's fair?
Yes. But I wouldn't say took their eyes off of. I would say have just not been looking at. It just not been looking at. And I think that's because of all of the things I just talked about. Here's the thing, though, and I talk about this in the book. Sure, the most powerful people in any political party are based in Washington, D.C., even the ones who are elected from the states. The most powerful elected officials, lobbyists, advocates, political consultants, they're based in Washington, D.C. That's okay. But you know what? For each of us individually, we are also participants in the democracy. And most of us don't live in Washington, D.C. We live in places with state legislatures and state governments. By the way, I wish Washington, D.C. had one too. But most of us already live in places with state legislatures and state governments. And we are able to actually impact what happens there. Who wins and loses in competitive states like Michigan and Wisconsin and Minnesota, where the legislature is up for grabs this very year. And what happens in the Capitol once governing starts in Illinois and elsewhere, it's a place that you can still impact. And that fact is so hopeful in a moment where the entire national political narrative is about hopelessness and powerlessness.
Daniel, it has been a delight talking to you. Daniel's book, The Fourth Branch, How State Government Can Save Our Union, I think it actually just went on sale like 3 days ago. Daniel?
Absolutely. I wanted to come here publication week. I've had events around the country with folks from across the spectrum of the Democratic coalition, and I did not want to end the week without coming home to CPT. Thank you for having me.
Well, we appreciate it very, very much. Daniel Squadron is the president and co-founder of Future Now. Future Now is the parent company for Heartland Signal. And thank you. Thank you very much. We need to have you back so you can talk about the book you co-wrote with Chuck Schumer. That one was titled Positively American, Winning Back the Middle Class Majority, One Family at a Time. Very timely. Daniel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, you and your listeners.
We are going to take a break. We'll be back with more after this. Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT Willow Springs, is powered by ComEd. Visit ComEd.com/facility assessment to learn more about energy savings.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
It is Friday, and on Friday, we're heading into the weekend, we like to talk about something a little lighter, some arts, some culture. We're going to do all that and talk about something that you should put on your to-do list for next week. There is going to be an exhibit that you are going to want to see. And the Intuit Museum President Deborah Carr and Chief Curator Allison Amick are here to talk to us about it. Hello. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you for having us, Joan.
Deborah, why don't you start and tell us about this art museum?
Thank you. I'm delighted to do that. Intuit Art Museum has been around for 35 years. We're here in Chicago because Chicago is one of the few places in the country that robustly embraced self-taught art as a legitimate genre back in the mid-20th century. We're one of the few museums in the world that focuses exclusively on self-taught art, and we have a relatively recently reopened building that has been renovated and expanded. So we've got 3 times the space that we used to have, and we're right here in Westtown at Milwaukee and Chicago, and we see ourselves as the most welcoming, friendly, accessible, and safe space for you to come and experience museums.
Allison, there is a show that is opening June 17th. Tell us about it.
Sure, we're excited to open Cutting and Pasting a World, the paper craft of Henry Darger, which is being guest curated for us by Dr. Mary Trent at the College of Charleston in South Carolina. And it's a really exciting opportunity to share with our guests something new about Henry Darger's work. Henry Darger, if you don't happen to be familiar with him, is one of the most well-known artists in the field of self-taught art who happens to be from Chicago. He's known for writing extensively and for making a number of really interesting, oftentimes large-scale drawings that are basically a good versus evil narrative. And so at Intuit, you can come and you can see a recreation of Darger's apartment in Lincoln Park. But then we also have a space that we explore different aspects of Henry Darger's work. So we're really excited to share something about his interest in craft or the influence that might have played upon his art making.
The exhibit is not necessarily about our 250th anniversary of the United States, but it is coinciding with it. How does looking at American craft, how is that quintessentially American? Deborah?
Well, I think it's really interesting that craft in America is celebrating art and craft through an initiative called Handwork. And that's pretty exciting because I think for us in particular at Intuit, we have a lot of blurred lines between what has traditionally been known as art, what has traditionally been known as craft. And we're really excited to be celebrating this practice that Henry Darger had of creating scrapbooks. And that was really essential to his art making practice. So I think it's going to be an interesting exploration for people who are new to Henry Darger and people who are old fans of Henry Darger to see how his scrapbook making really plays into the final product of his artwork.
You know, today, it just so happens, was the day that artist David Hockney died at the age of 88. And, you know, David Hockney has been a household name for pretty much the entire time I have been an adult. Why does that kind of painting seem so easily accepted, so well displayed by museums, and yet things that are done with craft are just as artistic, but don't seem to get the same respect? Allison, why do you think that is?
Well, I think it's a complicated question and there's many reasons. I think historically it has been about who's been making the work, which has often been women, people of color. And I think, you know, we have a long way to go in terms of our appreciation for craft and for taking it seriously as an art form.
When does it transition from being a hobby to being an art form? Or maybe there is no transition there. Deborah, what do you think?
Well, I think that one characteristic of self-taught artists is that they, even though they couldn't or didn't even know about art school, they feel very passionately that they need to create art. And the artists that we show take that desire to share their lived experiences or their inner vision, and they create a serious practice of making art. And I think it really is about the viewer, and just as I mentioned earlier, people in Chicago really accepted works by self-taught artists as serious art, as serious practice. And today, more and more mainstream museums around the country and around the world are hanging works by self-taught artists right up alongside more traditionally contemporary artists, traditional art, and showing the comparisons and hanging them together, recognizing that that's serious practice.
Allison, I'm going to ask you a question that is terribly unfair. What is the best part of this new exhibit? What is the can't miss display?
Oh, I will say with this exhibition, we were so excited to approach Mary Trent about this and have her think, do you think we could do an exhibition around Kraft and Darger? And of course, she was overwhelmingly yes. I know myself, and I think others on staff would agree, have been so excited to learn about the practice of paper doll house scrapbook making and the use of paper dolls and this whole type of activity. And we're lucky enough to have a few such historical examples on view in the exhibition. And in addition to the amazing works from our archive and from lenders, but I just think this whole practice has been really fascinating to learn about.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't even know about this
I
at
didn't either.
the turn of the century, the last century, between the late 1800s and the early 1900s, as a consistent practice and as something that children were encouraged to do. And now we can see how that work generated by people at that time may have influenced Henry Darger.
And I think these craft histories and this type of work that falls sort of outside of what is more easily displayed in galleries really helps us to have a more meaningful and a deeper understanding of both art and history, the life and times we live in, how, it's really generative and enriching. And, I think we think this is one small area where we can get people to see something in a new way or an expanded way that's really,
Really
interesting.
contribute to art history and understanding of Henry's practice. Yes.
Deborah, correct me if I'm wrong, but this museum has been around more than 20 years. Is that correct? How did I miss this?
We've been around for 35 years. The first,
even worse that I missed it.
Well, not so much, Joan, because the first 8 or 9 years of its life, it was more of a pop-up thing. So it didn't have a permanent home until 1999. And then from 99 until last year, we were in a pretty small space in what was once the Randolph Street Gallery, which you might be familiar with on Milwaukee Avenue. And it isn't until we reopened with a bigger, expanded, more robust museum. Also, I mentioned welcoming. It used to be that we had this brick and glass brick facade. People would come and stand in front of the museum. They didn't even know we were here because it wasn't very welcoming. So we've opened it up. We've got glass. We've got a accessible ramp. And you can see that there is something exciting going on, even if you simply just start with the store, which is a very cool and funky space.
What do you sell in the store?
We sell lots of cool things made by artists, by folks that love to put things together in new ways. We also have things like socks and mugs and wine
Jewelry
cups, jewelry, cards,
unique one-of-a-kind objects and some fun branded merchandise.
So the kinds of things that you would see in an art museum, plus unique artist-made items.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard you say that this is an accessible place, ADA accessible?
Absolutely. That was one of the chief things that we wanted to accomplish with the renovation. So we've opened it up. We've got accessible ramp into the space. We've got now, for the first time, a passenger elevator. So it is very important to us that anyone with those kinds of needs feels really comfortable and can get to all the spaces in the museum, including the Henry Darger room, the Henry Darger exhibition, restrooms, everything.
And from what I've read, you also have kind of a flexible fee arrangement. Talk about this and also tell people how they can book a reservation.
Well, they don't even need a reservation. We come on in, just welcome, come on in. Everyone 24 and under is free every day. We also have free access for teachers, firefighters, police, active duty military,
radio hosts. Radio hosts.
Absolutely. Our members, of course. And then if anyone comes to the door and they're unable to pay or uncomfortable paying, we just welcome them on in.
That's what an art museum should do, because it needs to be open and accessible to everybody and not excluding anybody because of poverty or disability. Now, we're talking about this exhibit that you have that I believe premieres the 17th, but you've got some other stuff coming up. Drawings by Marvin Young, Drawing with Metal, Bill Brady, Life is Art, collection of Jan Petrie. You've got a lot of different programs. Is that typical where you don't just focus on one thing? You have constant new things for people to look at, experience?
Well, now that we've tripled the space, it's very important to us to make sure that we are presenting a variety of experiences. And not only do we have those exhibitions that you just mentioned, which we could talk about intensely, but for each of those exhibitions, we're also doing programs. So we do something Saturday mornings called a slow look, where folks can come in and take some time with one artwork in a facilitated way where they might discover new things by taking a moment to slow down. I mean, the museum still isn't, we're not the size of some of the bigger museums. So you really can come in and spend an hour and 15 minutes and see all those exhibitions, and then take a moment to create something in our community gathering space, which we call CLEO, our Center for Learning and Engagement. Spend some time. Right now, we're also highlighting work from our teacher fellows. So we work with Chicago public school teachers to help them get continuing education credits, and they learn about this art throughout the school year, and then put that curriculum that they've developed into their classroom. And at the end of the school year, we put on a show. So right now we've got works from student classrooms around the city in our community space and in our dedicated learning studio. So there's a lot to see and a lot to participate with right now.
You mentioned Slow Saturdays. For Slow Saturdays, or even Allison, anything to do with this new exhibit, are there times where there's like a docent, or do you have recordings? Or on Slow Saturdays, is anybody standing by a work to give some background and explanation?
Absolutely. And we actually have a Slow Saturday coming tomorrow at 10 a.m. And what makes it additionally nice is that it is before we're open to the public. So it's a really intimate look. And tomorrow we'll be looking at a piece, Spot, by Dr. Charles Smith in one of our recently opened exhibitions. And the hope is that you all listening to the program will come down at 10 a.m., come do a slow look with our lead educator, Joshua, in the galleries, and then go to the Clio space for some coffee, and then continue to walk around the exhibition.
Spot's a really special piece. It really called out to me because Dr. Charles Smith, African-American artist, Vietnam veteran, he really likes to create these sculptures that commemorate moments in our history that are less remembered in the non-African American community. But Spot is a little bit more playful than some of the serious works in that exhibit. Spot is, for those of us of a certain age who learned to read with the Dick and Jane books, if you remember Run, Spot, Run, it's that Spot that we have on view.
Yes, we're dating ourselves by even admitting we know the titles to those books. I mean, I've always found, I used to have a friend who had a membership at the Art Institute, and she would always ask me to go with her because it would be more fun. And I discovered that if you got the recording, because of course, we were just two people, we weren't a group, nobody was going to walk around with us. The background, the history, the context, the politics involved in a work of art. There's like a whole world that opens up when you really understand where something comes from and what went into its creation and what the artist may have hoped that you take away from it.
Every single artwork that we have on view has a powerful story behind it, just like you express.
Allison, what do you hope people take away from this new exhibit that you have?
Yeah, I hope when people come to the museum, they have an expanded idea of what a museum experience can be, which is very important to our mission, but also that will have complicated things for them a bit, that it will encourage them to think about artists that they wouldn't have perhaps been able to learn about in other spaces, that they'll come out and maybe seeing the world a little bit differently, or maybe have been challenged in some way, or had their mind opened up in another. So I'm hoping, I guess, that it would be an engaging experience where they would leave having, feeling something positive, worked up about something, or that they would come and that they would just have a memorable experience that would sort of push them in some ways.
And then they come back.
And that they want to keep engaging with with the museum. Yeah. So I think that's certainly something that we do offer here. And we are a nice space that's intimate, but we're not overwhelming. We have great guest services associates in the galleries who are willing to interact as much as one would like to be interacted with or not. And we cover a lot. And
we're easy to get to. We're right off the expressway. We're right at the Chicago Avenue Blue Line station. The Chicago Avenue and Milwaukee are here, so we've got 2 bus lines. So easy to get to. And if you're driving, just drive around the building. You'll find parking.
And if you're curious, our website is so easy, art.org. I mean, how can you forget it?
That's it, art.org?
Yes.
How did you're lucky you got that one. That's a great one. If somebody's interested in showing up tomorrow at 10 a.m. for Slow Saturday, how do they register? Or do they just show up?
Just show up and walk in the door. Our staff will be there to greet them and help them get started.
Beth, Allison, and Deborah, thank you so much for joining me today. I love to tell people who listen to this radio station, which is 90% about politics, maybe 95% about politics, that it's important to remember why you're fighting, why you're resisting, why you want to have a different country, and touching base with the arts, whether it is music, whether it is an art museum, maybe it's even just a family gathering, but that reminds you of what it is that's important in your life, and also kind of gives you a breather so that on Monday you can be ready to go back in the trenches. Deborah Carr, Allison Amick, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
I'm going to take a break, and then I will be wrapping things up right after this.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Hey, if you're in a complicated financial situation with real estate, you really can get great advice from David Hochberg. Let's say somebody in your family is deceased and you want to buy a home from the estate. Team Hochberg can walk you through that whole process. And remember, they have nearly 800 5-star Google reviews. An example of this is Cindy. Cindy and her sister inherited their mom's home when she died. Cindy had been living with and serving as her mother's primary caregiver and wanted to buy the home. So she called Team Hochberg for a free consultation. David helped Cindy get a mortgage to buy the home from her mother's estate, allowing her sister to receive her share of the equity at the same time. David helped Cindy get a mortgage so she could buy her mother's home, and her sister was able to receive her portion of the estate. Death can be overwhelming. So if you've experienced a family loss and there is property involved that you would like to buy, call Team Hochberg, 855-563-2843, or go online, 56david.com. Team Hochberg has helped me. They've helped thousands of WCPT listeners, but they can't help if you don't call 855-563-2843 or go on the interwebs, 56david.com. ACM Equal Housing Lender, NMLS 643114.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
That is going to do it for me. I will be returning to the airwaves, God willing, this coming Monday. And I want to remind you, even though it's early, that I will be on the air July 3rd. So get your dialing finger ready, because we will be talking about a lot of good stuff. Randy Manor is coming back to talk to me on Monday, and Jill Wine-Banks. We're also going to talk to Sun-Times legal reporter John Seidel, who's been posting a lot of important stories about the Broadview 6. So please join me then. And right now it is time for Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez. She's going to be talking to Dylan Conmee from the Ottawa Family Pride and Humankind Initiative, Christine Binder, Free Mom Hugs, and Peter Sorrellis, who's the CEO of Source Solar. This has been a very long week. As we end this week, we are still waiting for Trump's name to come off the Kennedy Center. They put up the scaffolding, and then the heavens let loose, and it looks like everybody went home for the day. But Donald Trump tried to get them to stop. He appealed the judge's ruling that said his name needed to come off, and late this morning, that appeal was denied. Woohoo! So the scaffolding was built. For most of the day, there was quite a crowd around the building, people just waiting to see those Donald Trump letters get pried off the side of the Kennedy Center. Hasn't happened. I don't know if it will happen over the weekend or not. Other great news. Remember, a judge ruled that the slush fund, $1.7 billion fund that Trump wanted to repay the insurrectionists with because they were so traumatized. Judge stopped it, but Donald Trump kept talking about how he was going to do it. He was going to find a way to do it. It was going to happen. So listening to that, hearing that, the judge issued a new ruling that said permanently, you cannot do this. Because she said, I'm doing this because it's been obvious from the way the president has been speaking that he's going to defy this order. So let me make it clear, not just for now, not just temporarily, but forever. You cannot create this slush fund. Yay! Justice sometimes moves very slowly, but it does move forward. Hope you have a great weekend. Your homework, again, is to find something that brings you joy, whatever that might be, because this is a marathon, not a sprint, and we are all going to make it to the end and see the other side of this. Have a great weekend, my friends. Good night.